So well done for choosing that. I was asked to talk mainly 3 points. Insight into the duties of a contractor's QS, the duties that we would expect the PQS to do, and the relationships, and then interesting experiences and encounters relating to cost management and cost control during construction. So, maybe I didn't just finish on the PQS or construction QS role. I think both have their pros and cons. The contracting QS, you're probably going to be ending up working a little bit harder. From the point of you're on site, you do seem to work a bit longer hours. It's not just an office job where it's an 8 to 5. There's times where there's subcontractor payments and that where you're going to spend your time 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. There can be quite a lot of fighting and stuff, obviously, because you're handling the money. But then the good side and the positive side is this is, you know, you've got a team, you're working with an awesome group of people for a common goal of building a project in the best time, on budget, and on quality. So you can really have a sense of camaraderie. Plus, probably the pay is quite a bit better. The PQS role, you know, I can't really speak too much about it because I've only really had 1 year's experience in a PQS role. I think you get to see a bit of the bigger picture because you start a project, you know, from feasibility inception stage. So you get to see more of the steps about trying to get the budget to work, the feasibility to work. If it's not working with an architect, how can you save money and stuff? So that's quite a nice plus. I do think it's more of an office hour job, you know, 8 to 5. You're not going to work Saturdays and stuff like that unless maybe you've got some deadlines. And yeah, it's more of an office-based job. It can be, I think, a little bit lonely at times when you're doing measures and stuff, especially when you're still very junior. You know, you've got to measure, and that's what you're going to do. But yeah, both have their pros and cons. So, getting into the duties of a contractor's QS. For me, a contractor QS, you are a jack of all trades. You really, you know, you might think measurement and stuff is quite a big focus, and at the beginning it is a very big focus of it. But you have aspects like you are an accountant, you are a lawyer, a big lawyer, you are a, what else is there? Insurance broker. You are, you know, you've got quite a few hats, and it's very dynamic. Sort of every day you've got different tasks. So if we just start from probably the main tasks is obviously your monthly valuation. That would be really where you would start the cycle, if you want to call it that. Most projects you'll have a monthly certificate or valuation that you have to submit to the client with all of the items you're claiming. This would include your original BOQ, your measured BOQ. It'll include any new site instructions that you might have received that you would need to price and include in that valuation. It'll include any new rates that if there's new items on the site or a new item on a drawing that you don't really have an SI for, you'll have to include that in your valuation. And then any, obviously, claims, whether it be extension of times or lost expense or that sort of thing. So that you'll submit to the PQS on a certain predetermined date every month. He would do his adjudication and he would give you a certificate with a corresponding amounts of what he's paid you. From that you would do your monthly cost report. For me, these sort of 2 items they're very important, but they're almost the mundane work. You know, it's a monthly cycle, and you just finished the one, and you've got to get on to the next one. But it's You can't get around it, but that's not the exciting part of the job. I understand that you've been looking at cost reports a little bit, so you know you would have your claimed, your paid, and your cost columns, and you would compare all of those to give you whether you're making money or losing money on each trade. Our cost reports look at sort of every single trade as a line item. So you would have concrete formwork, reinforcing, brickwork, or your selected subcontractors. Every single trade would have a claimed item, a paid, and a cost. And whether then you have allowances to make overclaims or underclaims. Obviously, we are all very good QSs and we don't have too many overclaims. But obviously, sometimes there might be a reason. So the cost report allows for that. Then other tasks, moving on from your duties that you have to do every month, there's fortnightly subbing payments. Now, obviously, our smaller domestic subcontractors and labour onlys, we usually, because they don't really have the biggest cash flow, we pay them every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, they'll put in a claim. You've got to do the measure. They'll have a hell of a lot of little extras and bits and pieces that you sort of got to sift through and find out, is it a claimable item? If it is, do I have a site instruction for it? If I don't have a site instruction, you need to chase your site team up to get a site instruction. So you just need to stay on top of it to make sure that whatever you're paying out, you can recover. And if you can't recover, you need to understand why you can't recover it, and you need to record it because it's going to be a loss for some kind of reason. And it does happen, you know, things happen on site, things don't go perfectly, so you will have now and then costs, especially with like bricklayers and plasterers and that sort of stuff, where you have to pay out money but you don't necessarily can claim it back. Fortnightly subby payments, that was one of my worst aspects of the job. I think purely from a conflict point of view, you know, because you usually you're dealing with that person's business and that person's livelihood, and it can become quite confrontational when it comes to money where he's claiming a lot and you don't quite see he's entitled to that. So I must say that can be quite taxing. No one likes to fight on their job. That's one thing that I do not miss. But yeah, it's part of the job. It's part of life. You get easy subcontractors that are fair and reasonable, and it's a breeze. And you get difficult ones, and it can become quite taxing. Then, related to that, another one which isn't most fun is wastage reports. As a contractor QS, you sort of just need to guide the site team on how they're going in terms of wastage. So you've got a concrete wastage report, you've got a brickwork wastage report. If there's other domestic trades like plastering, and then maybe I'm hungry, if you take that on as a domestic subcontractor, then there's that wastage report, which really just compares claimed versus what they've actually used. And you know, say, guys, the drawing shows 200 cubes this month, you've used 210, we're not looking quite too good. Or is there a reason for it? Did that 10 go somewhere else or something like that? So yeah, those are the four kind of repetitive tasks which aren't for me the most exciting, but they're necessary. Then you get other aspects of the job. One quite exciting one for me is the P&G spread. So at the start of the project, you'll get handed a P&G. You all know what a P&G is? Which is your plant, your big plant, your salaries, all your sundry stuff, your site setup, your security, ablutions, anything you can think of, IT, cell phones. You'll get quite a massive P&G spread, and you would need to take that and compare it to your actual. So the tendering department will give you a spread, and you'll be like, Ish, with your contracts manager and that, you'll say, we think maybe an engineer short at this part of the job, or we've got an engineer too much, and you'll just need to adjust the spread according to how you see it. And try and work within the parameters of your budget. You know, you get given a budget, and if you want to chop and change people around and stuff like that, you try to keep within it. But sometimes there's things that are unforeseen, or the estimating department might leave a person out, or maybe even a plant might not have your crane up for long enough. And as your job goes along, you will make adjustments to your PNG spread, and it will give you sort of an idea of your cost to completion. Your cost of completion goes with your cost report. It forecasts what number you're sort of going to end up and what profits you're looking at making and things like that. Another quite interesting one is site instructions and quick RFIs. What we call, do you know what an RFI is? An RFI is a request for information. So it's similar to a site instruction. So if you are on site and the guys are getting to one stage of work and they don't have any information from the architect or the engineer on whether it be a dimension, a specification, anything, any information they need to build this aspect, they can submit an RFI to whoever is responsible for that, whether it be the architect or engineer or something, and say, this drawing, this item, please clarify what the dimension is or the setting out point. And they'll give an answer. Sometimes that has a cost implication. So part of your role as a contract QS is pricing these site instructions and RFIs. And it can be quite exciting, sort of, you know, speaking to the site team, finding out what it was about, what costs were involved, were there any possible delays relating to it, and if we are, we'll get onto that a little bit later. Then a small one is at the tender stage, you'll know in the bill of quantities you'll have provisional sums. So a provisional sum relates to a scope of work that's carried out by a selected subcontractor. And a selected subcontractor is a contractor that is agreed upon by both parties. It's selected. So part of your responsibility at the beginning of a contract is you would have a list of provisional sums, which would relate to certain selected packages, and you would agree a list of contractors that you would be happy working with. You know, obviously you have your certain contractors that you're happy with, and between yourselves and the professional team, you would agree this list of selected subcontractors. And they would try add some, you might not know them, or you might not be comfortable with them, and it's sort of a back and forth, agreeing this list with the professionals. Just a small one. Then, quite a big one. One of your main roles, and quite an interesting one for me, is claims. You know, you, as a contract QS, it's very important that you stay on top of your claims. You know, in obviously the JBCC and the GCC, all of the contracts, there's certain time barring clauses on various events. So it's your responsibility to make sure that if an event occurs, whether it be a delay or a loss and expense claim or a weather delay, weather notification or acceleration or anything, they all have various time delays attached to them, and it's your responsibility to make sure that the notice goes into the client or to the professional team, and once the notice goes in, to follow up on you get another set of time aspects to follow up on the delay and price it. And it's quite an important part, quite a big part, especially relating to extension of times and loss and expense which are unforeseen circumstances and that sort of thing.